So all of the details of a person's identity is recorded and restored. Okay? It's just, so what does all this look like? Let's put this together. And fortunately, they give us a really good definition here. May 1st, 1954, Watchtower, page 280. God has a record or transcription of the life pattern, which transcription falls under his judgment as giving that person or personality a right to a resurrection. So when you die, you're just data. You're just data in God's memory. For God so loved the world. Shouldn't that be for God so loved your data? I mean, really. So you're just data that God remembers. April 15th, 1973, page 249. Thus, resurrection or recreation actually depends upon God's memory of the life pattern of humankind. We can have confidence in that memory. Why, even imperfect men can preserve and reconstruct visible and audible scenes by means of videotape. How much greater is God's ability to keep records, for he called all the countless stars by name. Man, now it's even more personal. You're not just data, you're a videotape. So the resurrected you, it's just a record or a videotape. I mean, now it's probably like, some of you are a Blu-ray, and some of you older enough to be 8-track. Or reel-to-reel, yeah. So this next slide is really interesting, and I've underlined some key words. All right? Back to the Victory Over Death book, or booklet, pages 27 and 28. The Creator will simply recreate new human fleshly organisms from the earth's dust, from his perfect memory, and from his perfect memory will recall former life patterns, superimposing them upon the new brain circuits, and will infuse each organism of the life force, or Atma. Then these created living souls will live on earth once again. What a stupendous miracle. That's not what I wanted to say. All these terms here: record, register, superimposing life patterns, videotape, transcription, implants. These aren't biblical concepts. And they're taking these new concepts and they're pouring them into Scripture and saying, this is what it means. You can't do that. It's backwards. You have to go and see what it means and then pour it into your life, not the other way around. Now, not too long ago, I had a situation with my phone. I've got a new Droid here. And I had an old Trio. And it died. It was just going to die. And I've got data on that Trio that I needed, and I thought, I've got to have that data. I've got to save that data. So my problem was trying to get the data from one operating system basically to another operating system. For God, that wouldn't be a problem. According to the Watchtower God, that wouldn't be a problem. But when I'm recording, now think about this. This is a good illustration because I'm the Trio. I die. My resurrected body is going to be the droid, right? Okay? I get all the data, but it's not really me. I'm a whole different creature. I'm a droid. Have you seen what these things can do compared to a Trio? It's not the same phone. It is not the same phone. So if we're going to apply their definitions to the resurrection, is that really you? It's not you. Doesn't this sound like God's a supercomputer? I mean, all these terms. As I was going through all this, I was watching TV one time, and I've got the computer up, and I'm going through this, and up comes a commercial for Carbonite. You know what that is? It's a backup system. And the way that it works is you install the software on your computer, and it runs secretly behind everything and basically records what you do and transfers all that data someplace off-site, online someplace, and keeps a record of all that stuff. Now, if my computer were to crash and I were to get a new computer, I could download all that data onto my new computer. Now, here's the deal. Is that the same if I got a new computer, is that the same computer? No, it's the same data, but it's not the same machine. It's not the same computer. Can you imagine going from a PC, taking all your PC, having carbonite stored up, that thing crashes, and then you buy a Mac? And the only thing I know about Mac is if it's preceded by the word big or followed by in cheese. But if I get all that data on the Mac, that's a different computer. It's totally different. I got the same data, but it's different. That's not you. That's how carbonite is. So, how does this apply to the resurrection of Christ? All right? We've applied it to ourselves using phones and computers and stuff, but how does this apply to Jesus? First, a little background on Jesus. We're going to go through the history of the Michael-Jesus-Michael hybrid. I didn't know what else to call him. The first quote there, Michael the great prince is none other than Jesus Christ himself. And the reason why I go back and I quote that is I've actually talked to Jehovah's Witnesses that did not know that the Watchtower teaches this. They didn't know that they teach that Jesus pre-existent, pre-earth life was Michael the archangel. So the Son of God was known as Michael before he came to earth and is known also by that name since his return to heaven, where he resides as a glorified Spirit Son of God. That's from Reasoning on the Scriptures, page 218. In 2001, Watchtower says, God resurrected Jesus to life as a glorious spirit creature. I love that term, glorious spirit creature. Every time I hear that, I think of the creature from the Black Lagoon. I really do. Glorious spirit creature. It just does something to me. So you go all the way back to Studies in the Scriptures, Volume 5, way back in 1899. Page 454 says, the man Jesus is dead, forever dead. Has to be that way. According to the Watchtower, it wouldn't fit into the logic. So this is the overview of the Jesus-Michael-Jesus hybrid. So what about the details? Now we're going to get into some details. How did Michael actually become Jesus? How did this happen? Reasoning from the Scriptures, page 255. Jehovah transferred the life force and personality pattern of his firstborn heavenly Son to the womb of Mary. God's own active force, his Holy Spirit, safeguarded the development of the child in Mary's womb so that what was born was a perfect human. Now, remember, what's the Watchtower's definition of a life force? Is it personal or impersonal? Impersonal, okay? Is the personality kept within your life pattern? No, that's just data. That's just data, all right? 1982 Watchtower says, he had to become a perfect man and yet not lose his continuity of life. Very key term. His life force was not to be extinguished, but would be transferred to the ovum of the virgin girl Mary. It's very important, they say, that there has to be continuity of life. For Michael to be transferred into the womb of Mary, there's got to be this continuity of life, otherwise it's not the same being, right? Continuity, that's important. Insight on the Scriptures, Volume 2, page 56. Jehovah God caused an ovum in Mary's womb to become fertile, accomplishing this by the transfer of the life of his firstborn son from the spirit realm to earth. Only in this way could the child eventually born have retained identity as the same person who had resided in heaven as the world. So they see the importance of that continuity. There's got to be continuity. For Jesus or for Michael to become Jesus, he's got to, he remembers this pre-earth existence. He's got to have all that with him. There has to be continuity. So God just transferred it over. All right? There's a problem with that. They understand continuity, but what is the continuity here? Here's the problem. 1958 Watchtower. God sent him down from heaven to be born as a human baby from Mary the Virgin. God's beloved Son emptied himself of all his heavenly glory and power, even yielding up his glorious heavenly body, his godlike form. God then transferred his Son's life force down from heaven to the virgin womb of Mary. So what did Michael give up in order to be transferred into Mary's womb? His glorious heavenly body. So what happens if life force and body are separated? You cease to exist. Where's the continuity? Okay, because if he just transfers the life force, he could have stuck my dog's life force there, right? Okay. So we've got death. My question, why did God kill Michael? What did Michael do? But he separated the life force. So if death is the separation of life force from the body, and Michael's life force and personality pattern were transferred into the womb of Mary, then isn't it accurate to say that Michael died? Yeah, another way of saying it is Michael was killed. So if the life force is personal, actually, no, I'm sorry. When you get this far with a Jehovah's Witness, sometimes what they will say is, well, no, there's got to be something to the personality of the life force itself. There's got to be, and they use that word continuity, because they're starting to see the problem. If you separate life and body, you've got non-existence, death. So when they see the problem, some Jehovah's Witnesses will say, well, no, there was a continuity of the person in some way. If that's the case, if the life force is personal, then we've got something that's personal which survives death, don't we? That's contrary to their whole idea of an immortal soul. Interesting that they would go in that direction. Not many JWs do, but this one did. Remember, the Watchtower teaches there can be no being or existence without life and body both. Withdraw life and being life and being and existence ceases. Death is the dissolution or separation of things which combined constitute being, namely life and body. Again, that's from that 1881 Watchtower that I've got there. So if Jehovah implants or superimposes the personal record, register, transcript, whatever you want to call it, this life pattern into a newly created body, then isn't this an entirely new being? I mean, it's just a copy of a non-existent being. You don't exist anymore. It's a copy of you. Actually, it's a copy of a copy because God has the original data, carbonite heaven somewhere. He just takes that data and implants it into the new you. I've got a problem with that. And when I asked that question to this Jehovah's Witness, he didn't really have a problem with it. And I thought, how am I going to handle that? So I'm kind of praying about it, and I said, well, all right, then if this is the way resurrection works, God just takes your data and implants it into a newly created body, then what would keep him from doing that again, right now, with you? Boom, there's another you standing right next to you. And this one Jehovah's Witness says, oh, no, God wouldn't do that. He couldn't do that. I said, well, why not? Why couldn't he? If that's the way he does it, then why couldn't he do it? And he had no answer to that. And then the next JW elder that I talked to said, well, yeah, God could do that. I said, you have a problem with that? He said, no. I said, I do. If I'm at my house and somebody rings the doorbell and I open it up and there's me standing there and it intends to come into my house and hang out with my kids and go to sleep with my wife, I'm going to shoot it. Remember that Second Amendment we talked about? I can hit a business card, edgewise at 10 feet and split it in half. It's dead. This guy didn't have a problem with that. I'm like, great, now what direction do I go in? So again, I'm praying with this guy, Lord, how do I get him to see how ridiculous this is? You've got another you standing there, and he doesn't have a problem with it.